Hey folks, welcome back. So I just finished my live after returning from Rochester, New York, and I need to clarify a few things because some trolls or people that don't pay attention are telling fairy tales and lies. So let's be clear about a few things. Number one, the trip was very informative. And as I said before I went, my main purpose in going is twofold. One, to have a meet and greet with South Africans who've arrived in the States. I'm having another meet and greet in Texas, but this one was to go to Rochester because it's a reasonable trip I can make, 5-hour drive, but it's nonetheless reasonable. So I said I'd go up there because there were concerns and I want to have meet and greet. And I said if one person shows up, that's success. If nobody shows up, oh well, then I'll figure something out. And that's how I treat my meet and greets. And this isn't new. This is the first time. So anyone who tries to make that claim is full of crap. I did 18 meet and greets in my last trip to South Africa. I do an average of 15 in a month every trip. I've done 18, I've done 17, I've done 16, I've done 17 another trip. So I always do meet and greets all over the country. People want to meet me, they want to chat with me, want to take selfies, want to hang out, answer the questions. And then it was really crazy. Last time when I was in South Africa, I did 18 of them and had over 2,000 people show up because people were interested in the refugee program. And there wasn't much information at the time. I was one of the few people analyzing at the time. So meet and greet, that was first and foremost. And I did that, accomplished that. The night I arrived in the snow, because it was pouring down snow, falling like crazy, people came. I met with 6 South African refugees and a South African who is a U.S. naturalized citizen who lives in Rochester, who's been helping some of the refugees out because they were in a desperate situation. So I met with them all, and the second purpose to meet with them for the meet and greet was to hear what they had to say and to see face-to-face. When you see a person in person, it's much easier to determine whether what they're telling you is an exaggeration, if it's hyperbole, if it's a hysterical statement. And so I wanted to see that personally, rather than just talk to people through chat or on a WhatsApp, phone call, video call. Much better to see a person in person and see what they had to say. So I listened to their stories, and quite frankly, very disturbing. So it reinforced what they said. Now, not everything that the refugees said I would agree entirely with. One of the concerns is with some of them felt that they were intentionally being targeted because they're South African. So, for instance, a refugee was told that, well, you're not in a red state. What does that have to do with anything? That's political speech. And by the way, I'm going to write a response to Church World Services, who did send me a pro forma response tonight in which they said that we can't share information about clients, yada, yada, yada. Fine, I didn't ask for information about clients, but I will give you information about clients without naming this specifically, things that I was told by refugees, not just South Africans. We'll see what they do with it. Anyway, so I didn't go there to stir shit. That's not my purpose. My purpose was to get ground truth and also to have a meet and greet. I had the meet and greet. I could have come back after that. That would have been success. So the next morning, I went to Church World Services, which I had contacted in Rochester by email the previous week and left a phone message. No return call. No email response. I also, after a day of not hearing from them last week, in case they weren't getting it, sent a message to the New York office, contact them, no response, a voicemail. I wrote an email during the week to the headquarters in Indianapolis, to the compliance office, and that's who responded to me tonight, their compliance office. That email reached my inbox at 6:18 this evening when I was probably about to cross the state line. I was around Corning, New York, just about to cross the line back into Pennsylvania. I didn't see it until later tonight when I was doing my live stream. I saw they sent me an email. So, not there to stir shit. So I want to be very clear about an altercation that occurred. It wasn't an altercation, just some dude lost his frickin' mind. And that had nothing to do with Church World Service. People think that this was a response to me going to Church World Service. But it had nothing to do with Church World Service. In an effort to find what support refugees in New York could get, since Church World Service isn't providing them with these services, even though they're getting paid for it, I sought to find other agencies in town who provided services. And there are other agencies. I made a list of them that's available, some of which Church Services made available to people. Refugees Helping Refugees. I tried to find that organization. I went to the address that was listed for them, and there's a sign on the building that says they're no longer here. They're at this address. So I turned around and went back to the other address. When I arrived there, there's nothing at the location. It's a parking lot across the street from the baseball stadium, which I presume is where the Rochester Red Wings play at, and next to a community college. Big parking lot. Nobody there. No building. Well, later in the day, I found out another organization that the address is actually the southern part of the street, so south on that street. So that was left out of the address. And I have the screen capture for that. It just says Plymouth. It doesn't say South Plymouth. So anyway, so that's why I didn't find that. So then I'm like a little confused here. I went to find Refugees Helping Refugees. I thought that would be a good place to find people helping people, but I couldn't find them. So I called their number, And their number had a screening service. It was like AI. It says, if you are a client or a friend of a client, or something like that, press 1. And I listened to the whole recording. If you are a solicitor, go away, basically. I was like, oh, that's just. So I pressed 1. And then it came back, that does not work. So I tried again. It does not work. So you can't call their number that they listed. Maybe that number's no longer in service. I don't know. But they gave me the wrong address on their sign. So someone made a mistake. But anyway, I was going to go there later today, but never got there. So the place where I was verbally accosted by some guy that lost his frickin' mind is unfortunate, because I went to another place called Legal Assistance of Western New York, because they provide legal services to refugees. But I drove to that place. It was in a dodgy part of town. There was no parking. When I'm around the building looking for a parking space, I looked over at where the office is supposed to be at, and it didn't even look like there was anything in there. So I'm like, this isn't that important. I was just trying to find a place to help people. So anyway, but there was nowhere to park. There was paid parking, but I wasn't. Anyway, so I gave up on that. So then I went to a place that looked like it was going to be promising. Now, I went back to refugee Church World Services parking lot, and I ran into another refugee whom I talked to who told me their experiences, which weren't very good. It's not a South African. And then I was going to leave. I did a live stream from there, and one of my viewers said, Church World Services, a different location. They're over on Lexington. I said, well, I have a place on Lexington I'm going to, so I'll try to do both of them. So I went over there, and it was outside a church. So I went to the place that my viewer sent me to, and it wasn't Church World Services. So they were no longer there. They had moved, presumably to the place where I'd already been. So it's inside of a church building, and it's called Mary's Place. So they had bookshelves and a library inside that people could borrow from. They had all kinds of stuff set up to help refugees. There were some Kenyan Somalis there who were friendly. And then they brought me a gentleman from Afghanistan who talked to me. He was very friendly. I explained to him what I was doing. I said, listen, I came unannounced. I'm just looking for places to tell a positive story and try to find out what service is available so I can tell these other refugees that you could try to come here and get some services if they're available to them. That's why I'm here. And I'd like to do, interview if possible, No one's obliged to do it. The guy was very friendly, told me a little bit about himself, and he said, well, you should talk to our supervisor, in a very friendly mood. So we walked over to talk to the supervisor at Mary's Place, which was actually down the street. And as we went across the street, I'm like, oh, this is the place I was going to come to next, because this place helps people. And we went inside, and everybody was there friendly and everything. And they gave me the guy's number, who's the supervisor, because he's off at lunch. And I said, okay, I'll get out of here. I'll wait for him. I'll give you my number. Wait for him to call me back, or I'll call him later on. If he's available, I'll come by. If not, then it's fine. I did come unannounced, so if you're able to accommodate it, that's great. If not, I got it. And everybody's fine, okay. And I was about to leave, and this other guy comes in, the one who verbally abused me, and was insulting and very rude and disrespectful and profane. And so he went to the back and was polite, and then he started looking at his phone, and I started to walk out, and he came up in front, and he goes, I need you to leave. Sorry? I don't need you here. I said, why? I don't need you here. I know who you are. I know what you're all about. And I said, okay. All right, I'll leave. It's private property. I'll leave. I'll leave. So I walked out, and he ran his mouth about me inside. And I looked back in, and I said, sorry? No, I said, he ran his mouth, and he said something about me. And I said, well, you wouldn't be behaving this fashion if what you heard about me was true. And I walked down the street. He walked out the building after I'd left, and he stands on the porch and starts shouting, fuck off to Pennsylvania. Fuck you. Fuck off to Pennsylvania. Fuck you. Fuck off. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, dude, I'm standing on a public street, and I'm like 40 meters away. Why you got such a potty mouth for an adult? Anyway, so I recorded a video, and I crossed the street, went down to my car. He went to his car. I looked back, and then he jumps back out on the sidewalk. He's standing there, or in the street, I don't recall which it was, and he starts filming me. For what? Trying to intimidate me? Okay, that was at Mary's Place, refugee outreach. Every person I met at that place was wonderful, friendly, polite. And I was polite and professional and friendly to them. I made no demands of them. I have no qualms with them. It wasn't Church World Service, whom I also don't have beef with. But this gentleman clearly has a personal problem. And clearly somebody must have lied to him, or he's not very bright. Because now what he's done is raise suspicion. The correct answer to this would have been simply, as I was leaving anyway. I was done. They had the information. The guy was going to call me, or I was going to call him back later today. And all he had to say was, okay, well, he'll get in touch with you. Thanks. And I was leaving. But no, he had to act like an ass, like he's in frickin' Minneapolis dealing with ICE. That treatment of me, an American citizen, a combat veteran with 36 years defending this country, is reprehensible. If that's how he treats me when I did nothing to provoke him, I wasn't even rude to the guy. I was friendly and polite. How does he treat refugees? I don't know what his position is. I don't know what his role is. But if he represents an organization, that's unfortunate. Because as I said, Mary's Place looked to be a great story of an agency providing services. And I was trying to find services for refugees who weren't getting it from someone else, if they're available. Now I don't know. And instead of knowing and being able to show video or having interviewed a guy and had something positive to say and tell people what a wonderful organization it is, now I'm going to look at their funding. And I'm also going to look to see if there's a nexus between them and Church World Services. And as a consequence of my video this morning, someone contacted a U.S. congressman. It wasn't me. I was just informed about it. What a dumb move. But no beef with the organization. Mary's Place refugees seem to be fantastic from what I could see. And I offer an opportunity for the director, Mike, to come on my program. Doesn't even have to be live. We can record it. And I'll also offer him to view it before I publish it, which I do sometimes for sensitive interviews for people. Because I have no beef. And I don't know what's going on with that guy. But for those who falsely come on my videos and claim I went there to stir shit, you're a liar. I went there to meet with South African refugees, just like I'm going to Texas meet with them, and also to hear what they were complaining about, to see if there was merit to it. And I want to give Church World Service an opportunity to respond. But not only can I not talk to them, the refugees can't talk to them. And the South Africans told me that. They don't answer the phone. They don't respond. They don't open the door. And here's one of the things I said. So in the video that South African refugee filmed about going to Church World Services, so I knew I was in the right place because I saw the video, one of the things I said to my audience, I said, well, if it's by appointment only, I asked him, I said, did you have an appointment? He said, no. I said, well, see, I mean, if you didn't have an appointment, but didn't have an appointment because they didn't answer the phone. But again, a very fair, objective way to address it. But the situation that occurred later had nothing to do with Church World Services. And as far as I know, it has nothing to do with Mary's Place except for that one jerk-off. I don't know what that guy's problem was or what he's saying. But I don't appreciate it. And now all you've done is stir suspicion when nothing. This was a good news story. You would have got good attention. 120,000 people watched this program. You could have got a good attention. But instead, what you've done is you've raised suspicion. Anyway, so thanks a lot, folks. You take care and be well.